She
There
spent too
goes your
much time.
degree.
And I think she's younger than me, so I don't know if she even had Robert Eisner. Me, I don't even know if she took an economics class. She's probably just out of Medill, for all I know, but she clearly is an economic illiterate. But the topic that McCarthy came to discuss was the debt ceiling matter and his position that I'm willing and I want to sit down with Mr. 10%, the big guy, President Biden, to talk about spending reductions, and by that I mean rate of growth in spending reductions, not actual spending reductions. Here's what McCarthy had to say.
Do you know we'll pay 10.5?
You did it three times in the Trump administration.
As we did economic changes. We never raised the debt ceiling by
But the
itself.
tax cuts, that was like $2 trillion deficit.
And you know how much we're bringing in revenue? On average, in the 50-year average in America, you bring 17% of GDP. Today, we're bringing 20. That's the only two other times in modern history in America have you ever brought 20% of GDP. That's because the tax cuts actually created economy to grow and brought more revenue into the economy. But the problem is not about how much money we're bringing in, where the president just wants to raise more taxes. It's our spending. On 50-year average, we normally only spend 21% of GDP. Right now, we're spending 23.6 on our way to 25. So if you don't tackle the spending problem, you're never. And if you ignore this problem and you just raise the debt ceiling, our debt is now $31 trillion. It's bigger than our entire economy by 20%. You're at a tipping point. So all you're going to do is cause more inflation.
He was right about that, and it was good that he had his numbers at the ready. But, I mean, just so we understand what we're debating here, we're really debating whether or not we're going to stroll down the road to serfdom or sprint.
Okay. In our program, government will grow by 1%. But government under the Democrats and discretionary spending increased by 30%. This is more than inflation in GDP. This is what created inflation, all right?
Right. So if we have an existential crisis, if we're at a tipping point, then why would we take a position to allow the government to grow at all? We should be resizing government consistent with revenue, shouldn't we? But I digress. You heard Sarah Eisen screeching about Trump tax cuts in the beginning, and then she came back to it at the end, and this was pretty good for McCarthy.
You want to extend the Trump tax cuts, correct?
Yes.
But isn't that a little hypocritical when you're talking about finding savings everywhere and being on an unsustainable fiscal path?
How's that hypocritical when it's bringing
tax cuts,
20%?
Tax savings?
Really? You're sitting on the market. You're sitting where the future goes, where people make an investment. So will this company actually able to go public if they have more regulation and higher taxes? Who gets more money?
I get the argument for it.
But you know what happens on this floor?
No, you don't.
People make an investment and it pays for their pension. People make an investment to pay for their kids' education. And you know why these companies come here? Because this is the place to grow. But right now we're finding with competition, with higher taxes, with higher burdensome regulation into the administration, that they're not always coming to this market. So yes, I will always advocate for the idea that we are streamlining our tax policies, that we're also streamlining our regulation, so America is the place you want to start that business.
Northwestern grad Sarah Eisen, one of the resident dingbats at CNBC. Aren't you being hypocritical? No, I understand the argument. Well, clearly you don't understand the argument if you're calling me hypocritical. So he had to lay out a basic Econ 101 argument. And again, just so we understand each other, Scott, our friend Scott the Cow Guy, calls CNBC investotainment. That's exactly what it is. And it's investotainment and pimping for Fortune 500 companies, for big banks, for hedge funds. It is not, to Kevin McCarthy's point, you're sitting here at the market. You're sitting here at the what used to be the financial center of the world, and you're arguing for tax increases? What the hell's wrong with you? But that's what's wrong with them. They're corporatists, they're rent seekers, and they're flacking for corporatists and rent seekers. For more on all this, we're pleased to be joined by our friend Steve Moore, economist and Govzilla author. Steve, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey guys, good morning. By the way, I had not heard that interchange between these. Who was that reporter's name?
Sarah Eisen.
She's a Northwestern grad?
Yeah. Value of my degree just went
Northwestern
down
was
again.
supposed to be like, I thought that was supposed to be one of our top 10 universities in the
Yeah,
country.
well, there you go.
What an airhead. I mean, by the way, I'm so glad you played that because, I've been hot and cold on Kevin McCarthy over the years. I've known him since he was actually a state senator back in California. And, he's a friend, but sometimes we disagree on things. But he handled that brilliantly. And she had no idea what she was talking about. And it's insulting, frankly, because as you guys know, I helped with Larry Kudlow and Art Laffer and to help, Trump put that tax plan together. It was a huge success. What the hell is she talking about? We had the best economy in the history of the country before COVID hit. The economy was absolutely booming, and Kevin McCarthy is right. We actually have record amounts of tax revenues now. It's not a revenue problem, folks. I mean, the numbers speak very clearly. Even as a percentage of GDP, we're at an all-time high, and how much we're collecting in taxes. It's all on the spending side. That's why we are running a $1.5 to $2 trillion deficit. So, I mean, my blood is boiling listening to this idiot who does. She's a business reporter.
Yeah, allegedly. But I mean that's what CNBC does. They flack for the power structure. They don't flack for entrepreneurial capitalists. That's an illustration of it. But
by the way, you would think that CNBC, which is a business channel, would be pro-business and pro-free enterprise and pro-markets. Meanwhile, by the way, I had a piece in the New York Post on Monday. If you look at the Biden tax plan, he wants to raise the capital gains tax to 44.6%, almost a doubling of the capital gains tax. He wants to reverse our corporate tax cut that we did under Trump that brought all the money into the United States. He wants to raise it back up to 28%. He wants to tax unrealized capital gains, which means if you own, let's say, Microsoft stock and you made $500,000 on it, even if you haven't sold the stock, you have to pay a tax on it. Where are people going to get the money? And of course, because of inflation, all these other things, his tax on an investment that makes $1 million. Do you know how much the total tax would be on that, Dan and Amy? 85%. Who's going to invest in this country?
Well, I mean, there's nothing to say that you didn't say right there. It should be patently obvious to most. But I want to go back to the debt ceiling piece, the spend side.
Okay.
So what is your assessment of the plan that Kevin McCarthy has, the position he's taken? We're just want to slow the growth of government to 1%, to a 1% increase from current levels, and and the Biden administration is 30x that. Is that a good? I mean, assuming that there's going to be some sort of deal that includes the Senate when they get around to participating, and POTUS if this goes to the 11th hour and he agrees to sit down with McCarthy. I mean, is that a good enough opening position, or should he be a little bit more strident than he's being?
Look, a lot of this is theatrics.
Right.
But I would take a chainsaw out of the budget. I mean, if I were, and I'm not, and I were in that position, I'd say, look, let's start by cutting $1 trillion out of the budget right now. Now, that's a lot of money, sure. But here's the thing. Who really frames this very well is Rand Paul. Mm-hmm. And I think the three of us have talked about this before. But all we have to do if we want to balance the budget, all we have to do is just go back to the amount of money we were spending before COVID. And we could balance the budget. We wouldn't be running. Amy, does that make sense? COVID's over.
We don't have money anymore. A lot of us are now living paycheck to paycheck for the first time in a long time because of Biden's policies.
You know why? You're exactly right. That's why even the CNBC poll says 70% of people think that economy's headed in the wrong direction. And the reason for that is because people's paychecks are shrinking because of in terms of the amount that they're making adjusted for inflation. And so people are feeling poorer because they are poor. And the reason they're poorer today is because we spent $6 trillion. So, I mean, I hope people can connect the dots. I know your audience can because people are smart because they listen to the Dan and Amy show. But it's not that complicated. You drop $6 trillion out of the helicopters. People go out and spend all this money. It causes inflation, and then it goes on and on and on. And the only way to stop that is to start drawing that money back. So I'm with Rand Paul. Let's go back to what we were spending before COVID.
I want to get your reaction to something Elon Musk had to say in his sit-down with Tucker Carlson this week when the topic turned to banking and interest rates. and what he sees on the horizon with a reckoning coming for bank balance sheets in terms of their commercial real estate holdings and perhaps residential real estate holdings as well. Take a listen.
And so if banks end up having loan losses in both their commercial and, well, they're definitely going to have loan losses in their commercial portfolio, but also in their mortgage portfolio, this is a dire situation. There is a solution to mitigate the magnitude of the damage here, which is for the Fed to lower the rate. But they raised the rate again. Now, if I recall correctly, which important caveat, I think the last time the Fed raised rates going into a recession was 1929.
If the Fed doesn't cut rates, we're headed towards a Great Depression, Steve?
Look, this is exactly related to what I was just saying. If the Fed does raise rates, they could really, cause economic havoc. If they don't raise rates, we're going to continue to have really high inflation. So what do? I mean, in other words, I want to make sure people understand the reason that we're in this precarious spot that Elon Musk just described correctly is because we spent $6 trillion. I mean, Joe Biden's running around the country acting like his economic policy has been a success. There's hundreds of billions of dollars. Did you guys know this? There's hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars that hasn't been spent yet from the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, including $300 billion in this green energy slush fund. Well, why don't we just cancel that? We don't need $300 billion for windmills and solar panels. So it's not that hard to cut the spending. I'm not disagreeing with Elon Musk, what he's saying, but if the Fed were to start lowering rates, that could cause more inflation. And we're in a bad spot right now, folks. And by the way, Trump is responsible too. He spent $2 trillion on his way out as well. So I'm not saying this is only Democrats, but to say, we're going to deal with this by raising taxes,
well,
that would destroy the economy.
Well, speaking of taxes, our new mayor-elect, ready for this, wants to implement a Chicago income tax, a jet fuel tax, a mansion tax, a banking tax, increase the hotel tax, and a commuter rail tax.
So I'm so glad you mentioned this because I was speaking with my friends at Illinois Policy Institute, as you guys know, and they were showing me a dot matrix graphic of where Brandon Johnson got his vote. Mm-hmm. And I was shocked at how many of these Gold Coast liberal millionaires voted for Brandon Johnson. You can see in the dot all those $1 million, $10 million, $5 million high-rise penthouse suites. Those people voted for Brandon Johnson.
I know. I'm still shaking my head. This is a
stupid.
bad nightmare.
I mean, it really is. And it's not like Vallis was going to be some kind of Ronald Reagan, but at least he had some common sense. And then I saw the other day, John, when he had, by the way, why did you have those riots this weekend? I don't even know what people were rioting about.
They were protesting civilization.
Well, they're doing a good job.
It was warm outside, Stephen Moore.
Oh, my God. I mean, I watched that video. I'm like, I don't know what they're angry about, but you'd think they'd be happy, by the way. They got their guy. And then Brandon Johnson says these are societal problems. And, he's not people who shoplift, that's because of income inequality.
Yeah. Well, it's on the same weekend the same week that they announced the DNC's coming to Chicago. So why not?
Oh, I love that. I love that. I mean,
I love it. It's great.
It's perfect. I mean, this is, how do you like it, folks? This is Democratic rule. And look, we're laughing about this, but I really am heartbroken by it because like you guys, I love Chicago. I've lived there. I think it's a great city. And I like the old Rich, I don't know how old you guys are. I think I'm a little older than you are. But I remember when Richard M. Daley, the boss, was the mayor, and you had to pay graft, right? I mean, it was corrupt because it was like a mob rule, but at least he got things done.
The wrought iron gates and the planters, it was lovely. Meanwhile, he's selling off city assets and laying the foundation for what we have today. There are no white hats in this story of Chicago over the last 50 years. Not from my perspective.
At least you knew, at least if you wanted to get things done, you knew who you had to pay off. Now that these investors are so stupid you can't even pay them off to get things done in the city.
There's a commentary. Steve Moore, economist and Govzilla author. Steve, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Okay, guys, have a great week. Take care.
You too. Always a pleasure. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
In the present cultural climate, homeschooling can be one of the best decisions you make for your family. Illinois Christian Home Educators invite you to their 2023 Homeschooling Conference, May 18th through the 21st at Olivet Nazarene University in Bourbonnais, Illinois. If you've been considering or currently homeschooling, this is the perfect opportunity to interact with homeschoolers from all over the Midwest at Illinois' largest homeschooling conference. Register today at ICHE.org. That's ICHE.org. With dozens of workshops, vendors, and a job fair, the 2023 Homeschooling Conference will help decrease your anxiety and increase your success. Bring your whole family for fun activities, including rock climbing, volleyball, a planetarium, indoor swimming, and much more. That's May 18th through the 21st, held at Olivet Nazarene University. Affordable on-campus housing is available but limited. For more information or to register, visit ICHE.org. That's the letters ICHE.org. You don't have to homeschool alone because Illinois Christian Home Educators are there 365 days a year.
Guys, a lot of people talking about testosterone, but do your homework and be sure to go to a provider you can trust. I recommend my friends at Low T Center, where I've been getting my levels checked for the past 8 years. Low T Center exclusively specializes in men's wellness. They check all your levels, not just your testosterone, and determine the cause of any symptoms you're having and whether you're a candidate for low T or something else like low thyroid or sleep apnea. Typically, their annual health assessment is completely covered by health insurance, and they check everything, including PSA, which is your prostate levels, and thyroid, liver and kidney function, cholesterol, glucose levels, and more. Low T Center has affordable and convenient options for treatment, including monitored self-inject treatment that ships directly to you each month, so there's no need to come to the center each week. Make your health a priority this new year and schedule your annual health assessment at Low T Center today. It's covered by most health insurance or less than $100 cash pay. Visit lowtcenter.com to book your appointment online. That's lowtcenter.com. Tell them Dan Prof sent you when you do. Low T Center. Reinventing men's healthcare.
Are you looking for a place to worship and grow your faith in the Chicago area? Are you looking to serve alongside other believers? Quentin Road Baptist Church can help. We're located in Lake Zurich, Illinois, and our doors are open to all. We welcome you to join us on Sunday mornings at 11 for a time of fellowship and worship. At Quentin Road Baptist Church, you'll find a community of believers who are dedicated to seeking, studying, and sharing the Word of God. Our pastor, Jim Scudder Jr., delivers powerful and inspiring messages that will encourage